In today's economy, more people than ever are looking to buy and sell businesses. But how do you do it? Welcome to the Deal Board, presented by Transworld Business Advisors. Straight talk about real deals and real people. Listen to stories, interviews, and expert advice to help your business sale, merger, or acquisition process. Now, here are your business exit experts, Andy and Jessica.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back. And we are in Australia. I was in Australia, and we are going to talk about today buying and selling businesses in Australia. It's a little bit different. We have some great guests today. Of course, we have Evan Foster of United Franchise Group, who's head of United Franchise Group, working with brands like Signarama, fully promoted Transworld itself. And we have some great partners over there that we interviewed, like Gunther, Steve Stucci and Stephen Edwards, and Jeremy O'Gorman. So we have some great interviews today to talk about buying and selling businesses in Australia.
Right. And I mean, they're going to give us some information about buying and selling, but obviously, like we've talked about on the first episode of our Australian podcast, the one previous to this about growing and doing business in Australia. Australia is a really good market to look into if, even if you're a US based company, you're looking at expanding. We talked about how big of a marketplace it is, but on this podcast, we wanted to share what the small business climate looks like. So the small business climate is growing in Australia, about 4.3% growth year over year in terms of new small businesses. And it was interesting, Andy, right? When we're doing some research, how the Australian Statistics Bureau defines small businesses as they define it as businesses employing under 20 people, whereas the US defines it as a much larger business. So there are some variations with those statistics, but it's still small businesses employ 44% of all employees in Australia, a really big deal and a really big driver of the economics in Australia.
Yeah, Australia reminds me of our beginnings in the United States. I mean, it's still a huge landmass, lots of natural resources, businesses are growing, franchising is growing, people are still immigrating there. It's a very tolerant country. People move there from other countries, big Asian population, big Indonesian population, lots of Kiwis from New Zealand, so a lot of people from India. So there's a lot of people that move to Australia to get a new start, and very entrepreneurial, great small business. There's a lot of small businesses there, like restaurants, of course, and the wine industry is big, and the sports industries are big, and outdoors industries are big. So there's a lot of things going on. Tourism, amazing place, the Gold Coast. They have their own amusement parks, several amusement parks in one place. So it's really a dynamic place to do business, and we have some great partners there. In Australia, and Jason from Adelaide, and I'm just trying to think of some of our franchisees that we spoke to, but that were there, Ian Coots, and some of the other folks that came down. I really want to thank them for taking the time out and being on our podcast, some of them. And you're going to get a really good feel of what it's like to buy and sell a business.
Right. And, our podcast is a global podcast. So a lot of the topics we talk about are applicable to every market, but there are certain market dynamics or certain, I'd say, unique things that happen in each country. And I know one of the things I think it was Evan that talked about was, different legal aspects in terms of especially employment law. And he's going to talk about that on the show. But so this should help you educate yourself if you're in Australia, because I know we have Australian listeners out there and you're thinking about selling or buying. It'll give you some insights on what the market is doing. But also, as kind of we teed up in our previous Australian episode, that every business owner should be thinking globally at this point. So if you're thinking about expanding globally, obviously we're big proponents of expanding through acquisition, especially going into a new marketplace. It's just a little bit easier if you're expanding geographically into another country. So this should be a good overview of what you would need to know about buying a business in the Australian market as well.
Yeah, and like you said, Australia's been through the Royal Banking Commission, so they had a little bit of a kind of not a downturn, but of course a short supply or a trickling down of some of the money flow everybody figured out what the borrowing laws were, and so there was a major kind of emergence of how people get money and lend money. So that had kind of put a little bit of a pause. And then you saw the election come through, and that always kind of puts like a pause. So now what you're starting to see is what they feel is that the economy is slowly starting to come back. As much as here in the United States, we've had a hot economy for the last 10 years. For the last several years, it's been kind of murky, I would say. So you hear the positivity, some of the things that are coming back. So it's a great time to buy, a business in Australia. There isn't an SBA lending, but and multiples are about the same, 2-3 times for a small business. Seller financing, or as they call it, vendors are called sellers. Vendor financing is not as well accepted. It is becoming more accepted. So you see all these things, like you said, it's a global world out there. So once norms start happening in buying and selling, they kind of permeate throughout the whole marketplace, even in Australia.
Right. And those are the little things, the intricacies that you have to be aware of. But in general, same process that we've talked about on the show. I think we've got some great insight from our franchisee partners that have brought to the show. And hopefully, whether you're a seller or a buyer in Australia or in a different country listening, this show will give you some insights if you want to take action and move forward with the market.
Yeah, it's a great show. Let's get to it.
Let's do it.
Transworld Business Advisors is the world's largest business brokerage and mergers and acquisitions firm with over 500 brokers in nearly 200 offices worldwide. Transworld's team handles thousands of business sales every year. To be connected with a qualified business broker or learn more about the buying and selling process, visit tworld.com/the deal board or call 888-719-9098.
Hey everybody, we're back, and I have two very special guests with me. I have Steve Stucci from Transworld Business Advisors of North Sydney and his new partner, Stephen Edwards. And they have a great background in business, and Steve has been working at this for a while, and Stephen has just joined us. He has a great M&A background, and I'll let him talk a little bit about his story. We're just going over their strategic plan for their opportunities here in Sydney. And there's a lot of opportunity out there, right, Steve?
Yeah, there is. There's a lot of buyer activity happening at the moment. The last 3 months, we've experienced incredible buyer activity. Banks are tightening on their lending, however, but buyers are investing more, diverting their investments on businesses now rather than property, which is good for us. It's generating a lot of activity, and sellers are experiencing some competitive environment with buyers out there today.
Right, and Stephen, not to confuse everybody, but Stephen, welcome aboard, number one. But, Stephen, you just came out of a situation where you've been doing some M&A work in a number of industries, but maybe one in the franchising business. So you're bringing a lot of things here to Transworld, and you think there's a ton of opportunity out there right now.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I've worked with Steve in the past. Having been a CEO of a big global franchise group and seeing a broking area within that business do really well, I felt it was time for me to go out and do something for myself, but still be within the group. I see the value of a franchise group, and Transworld was put to me, and I liked it, and here I am. I've sold over 200 different businesses in my time in M&A, and I'm looking forward to bringing that to the already successful North Sydney.
Yeah, so there's a lot of opportunity here in North Sydney, and you're kind of rolling it out. And so what are some of the industries you're looking to do some work in? We were talking about that.
Yeah, so basically our business background evolves around the printing industry. So we're looking at more in the lines of printing companies, printing franchises, advertising agencies, but we're also now diversifying into other industries. But our general network of buyers and sellers are within that printing industry category, which we're seeing a lot of movement in that area, a lot of consolidation of printers and merger and acquisitions. So we're experiencing a lot of growth in that area at the moment. People are which are not performing are selling out to strategic buyers.
And Stephen, you've seen a lot of organized money out there looking for deals as well. So you've been talking about, diving into some of those industries and helping those people, actually doing a roadshow as well, right?
Yeah, so we're in a fortnight's time about to roadshow through our referral networks, people like accounting firms, financial advisors, small private equity, and we feel that the time's right now to get out there and start showing them what we can do and just give a bit more exposure on the Transworld brand and what our offer is. And it's primarily based around our past activities and experience and face-to-face. We're a big brand and we want to face-to-face it to as many people as we can.
Great. So if somebody wanted to reach out to you, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yes, it's through our generic. We've just created a new generic email address. It's northsydney@tworld.com.au.
Oh, great. And what do you think the economy is doing in the next year or so? Things were a little tough.
Yeah, things are tough, and vendor finance is starting to be more adaptable in the market now. People are starting to get a good understanding.
Right.
A lot of sellers are still a bit cautious about it, and they're referring to their legal people to talk about a bit that the risks involved with that. But with banks now tightening up their lending criteria, sellers will have to look at other options.
Yeah, and we know the market, right? So we've been doing this for 40 years. Yeah. We do thousands of businesses a year, and Stephen, you came from a place that was doing a lot of deals too, so you've seen it out there.
Yeah, so what's happening now is property's been on the slide, so people are looking to put their money in other areas. So whilst the banks are tightening up, there's still an opportunity to divert people's attention across the business and income producing instead of just assets sitting there going backwards in the Australian market. So the timing's pretty good for us, and we're going to capitalise on that, we hope, over the next couple of quarters.
Yeah, and you were talking that we're in an incredible niche, right? We have the deal size that people really aren't exploiting out there. So there's an incredible opportunity for buyers and even lower middle market family offices or strategic buyers to get involved, right?
Yeah, there's plenty of people looking for what to do, and we feel in the market of between 2 to 15 million. So under the top tier accounting firms is quite a market for us. There's a lot of home office, a lot of small investment firms, and we really want to play in that space. We don't want to lose some of our traditional experiences in franchising either. It's pretty important. So we feel we're a full service model at North Sydney, and we can cover businesses from the 500,000 up to, the multi-millions.
Well, if you give North Sydney a call or an email and you wind up with one of the Steve or Stevens, I think you're going to be in good hands. And so, again, great joining. Thanks for joining us, Stephen and Steve.
It's very difficult.
I'm getting it. And, thanks again for being such a good partner with us. Australia is a great place. We're very invested. We're looking forward to building out even more Transworld units across the country. But you guys have set a great base here, and I want to thank you for that.
Thanks, Andy.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks for coming out.
Hey, Andy, do you know what time it is? It's time for our Deal of the Week.
Deal of the Week. Sold.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. And it is Deal of the Week, and we are here in Australia. And I am with Don Gunther of Transworld Business Advisors of Brisbane. And he's got a great deal that he sold recently. Don, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Andy. Good to be with you. Yeah, we recently sold an ice cream manufacturing company. It was the first time I've sold a business such as that, and it was quite exciting. It was a good business, annual sales of around 1.2 mil, and the seller's discretionary earnings were around the $400,000 mark, and we sold that recently for 1.2 million.
Yeah, nice. So it's about 3-time multiple for a manufacturing business. That's a good deal. And the buyer was an individual or a company?
Yeah, they were a company. They actually had a wholesale business in a totally different field, and they wanted to diversify, and they saw that food manufacturing was a good field to go into.
Great. Did they get financing, or they came to the table with cash?
They actually came to the table with cash, so it wasn't a finance clause in the contract, so that made it very attractive for the seller.
Wow. So the seller was happy with the transaction?
The seller was happy. The seller is continued to work with the company for another year.
Oh, nice.
So they got offered a position with the company that was part of the deal.
Okay. So, and the seller wanted this. Why did the seller want to sell?
Family reasons.
Okay.
They've been doing it 15 years, started it from scratch. This business was a great business. It sold to five-star restaurants. It sold through their own retail outlets. They had two. And they also sold through convenience stores and takeaway shops as well.
Great deal for great people. Thanks, Don, for coming on today.
Thanks, Andy.
Hey, we're back, and we are talking selling and buying businesses here in Australia. I have one of our longtime partners here in Australia, Don Gunther of Transworld Business Advisors of Brisbane. He's a very successful broker here in our system. He does a great job of bringing buyers and sellers together. And Don, welcome.
Thanks, Andy. It's great to be here.
So let's talk a little bit about specifically Brisbane. It's a bustling city. It's a lot of good things going on. Gold Coast is an amazing place where people are vacationing to. I see all the theme parks around. So you have a pretty diverse economic kind of marketplace here.
Yeah, that's what I love about Brisbane market and surrounding areas. It's really diverse. Get a lot of people wanting to move here from interstate and overseas, and it's a great place to sell businesses.
Yeah, some people actually refer to it as God's country. They said it's that nice, so it's very temperate, very nice, great place to be.
Yeah, exactly. It's a beautiful climate, very warm. We don't really get a winter, and it's just a great place to live, great place to do business.
So, what are you seeing out there in the business sale marketplace? We've been talking to other people. They've talked about some of the challenges that Australia's had in the last few years. The Royal Commission for banking, the election, but you still see a lot of small businesses being sold, right?
Absolutely. I haven't seen any change in the last few years. It's just been growing, if anything. Brisbane itself is a growing capital city, and there's always businesses that are ready to sell, and there's always people ready to enter into a business. The great thing about what I do is I have the benefit of seeing people go on to the next stages of life, whether that be selling a business and then moving into retirement, or buying a business and becoming an entrepreneur.
Yeah, so obviously that's what we do here at Transworld. We work with a lot of sellers. We work with a lot of buyers. We're here at our expo. A little background noise is us doing business and learning about each other's marketplace, and so it's a good time for people to buy and sell. Over the last 5 years, you haven't seen much change, so the multiples pretty much stay the same. But I always tell people I'm so surprised that more people aren't buying businesses. It's a great investment, right?
Yeah, it is. In actual fact, the last couple of months, our buyer inquiries are probably double what they were. So there has been a change in that field. There's people wanting to get into businesses, and as a result, it's a great time for people to put their business on the market.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to get in touch with you here in the Brisbane market, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, they can either visit me on tworld.com or give me a call on 0408 230 203.
Don, great having you on. Great having you as a partner here. You're a leader in our industry. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Andy.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. And we have a great guest. We have Evan Foster, brand leader of Signarama here in Australia. And he's a native Aussie, and he is here to talk to us about doing business in Australia. And that's what we're talking about today. Evan, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Andy. Yeah, I'm a massive fan of the podcast, so it's great to be on. Thank you.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. And, it is a worldwide podcast. So we want to talk about business here in Australia. And, you have been a part of the United Franchise Group for a while. You've been a part of other companies that have come to Australia to do business. What do you see out there? Companies doing right, maybe companies doing wrong when they try to do that?
That's a good question, Andy. I've been with United Franchise Group for 13 years, and I've worked across a number of the different brands in our business, predominantly Signarama. But it's funny, Australians are fiercely independent. And I think one mistake that I've seen some American companies make is to treat Australia as the 51st state of the United States, and with all the same cultural norms and laws and cultures and all the rest. And we do have some idiosyncrasies that we have, which are a little bit different, particularly around the legal frameworks with employment law and commercial law. So there are some differences. Having said that, my experience with United Franchise Group is we've brought a lot of our sales practices, our relationship practices down to Australia at a time when many people said it wouldn't work because it wouldn't fit in with Australia. And we've managed to make it a success by, I guess, adapting it to the local environment. But at the end of the day, Andy, the same business practices apply whether you're in the United States, Canada, South Africa, New Zealand, Australia. It's all more or less the same. There's the rule of law, a strong entrepreneurial culture. People just want to get out and do business, and that's what's made us successful here for over 20 years in the country now.
Yeah, I've seen that even as we've taken Transworld into the Australian market. We've certainly seen things like there are certainly different labor laws that you have to be careful of, and it is about having good legal help. And so if you're going to bring your company to Australia, you have to have good local partners, right?
Absolutely, people who understand the local environment and how to grow a network. Also, some things which Americans may not be totally cognizant of is that the size of Australia is almost the same as the 48 states in the United States. So it's a big country with only 24 million people. So it's quite geographically spread out, right? So, it does make sense to try and concentrate in an area to grow the business before trying to tackle the whole country, because we don't have the resources in all the different areas to kind of scale as quickly as you do in the United States. So we were quite lucky with the way we did it 20 years ago by concentrating particularly on the Melbourne and then the Sydney markets and being able to expand from there. So it does make sense to try and start small and then expand from there.
Yeah, it certainly seems like everything's a plane ride here in Australia. Exactly, yeah. It's certainly not someplace that you drive around easily, and especially to Western Australia, WA. Right. So it's a long way out to Perth.
It's a New York to Los Angeles flight. It's the same kind
of 6 hours, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it's a long flight, but I mean, just talk about the Melbourne and the Sydney market. I mean, these are metropolitan cities, modern cities. There's a lot of business to be had.
Yeah, so Sydney and Melbourne are pretty much on par nowadays. They're both around 4.5 to 5 million. So they're really big sized cities, and our head office for United Franchise Group is here in Sydney. But you generally find most people will be headquartered in one or the other. But they're big metropolitan global cities now, and we've been really successful in both of those areas. And always looking to continue to grow, whether it's our Signarama brand or Transworld, as we also have here, or our 4 or 5 other brands in the country.
Yeah, and United Franchise Group is certainly a company that can help other companies come to Australia.
Yeah, and we do that through our consulting division, and we've worked with a bunch of other different companies to help do it, because unlike a lot of other franchise consultant companies, we actually do it day to day, and we've got 21 years track record of being able to build a network of close to 200 franchisees across our different brands here in Australia.
Yeah, and you talked about how entrepreneurial people are and how loyal people are and how kind of independent they are. You certainly get a sense of that people are really passionate about sports, passionate about food, passionate about music, passionate about a lot of things. I mean,
and also very passionate about franchising. So Australia, along with the United States, is one of the most franchised countries in the world.
Wow.
And so we have seen a lot of US brands import down here. There's also a lot of fantastic homegrown Australian franchise brands as well. But no, we're very passionate about franchising. It's a very mature culture down here.
Yeah, it's a great business culture. If you want to know more, you could give us a call, and you could certainly look Evan up on LinkedIn and give him a call and just ask him what it's like. And he certainly could put you in touch with the right people and talk about growing a business here in Australia. Evan, thanks so much for coming on today.
It's a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Hey, Jessica, you know what time it is?
Money time?
Almost. It's time for Listing of the Week.
Hey, we're back, and it's Listing of the Week, and I am with our partner, Don Gunther, here at Transworld Business Advisors of Brisbane, and we are not too far from Brisbane at our expo, and he's got a great listing if you're looking to buy a business here in Australia. Don, why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, thanks, Andy. Yeah, we've just listed this business. It's one of the most exciting listings I've had. It's an online hardware and industrial supply business, and being an online business, it's quite popular with buyer inquiries at the moment.
Yeah, I could imagine.
Work from home, but yet it does over 1.3 million in turnover. So this is a large business for an online business. Seller discretionary earnings in this business over 300,000, and we've got the business priced really well at 495,000 plus stock.
Wow. So why the seller obviously motivated?
The seller's motivated. There's also a high level of stock holding, so the investment's going to be somewhere around the 900,000 mark in total.
Right. So okay, so $900,000 on 300,000 is about 3x multiple. Sounds like a really solid deal. Obviously, you have a lot of inquiries. Anything else you want to talk about?
Absolutely. So the business supplies and delivers high quality abrasive drill bits, safety gear, and other industrial consumables into the Australian market and also overseas. So this is a good business and a great one for someone who wants to work from home or have a small warehouse.
Great. So what's the best way to get in touch with you if you want to learn more about this business?
Yeah, give me a call, 0408 230 203, or look me up on tworld.com.
Thanks so much, Don, for bringing that great listing to us today.
Thanks, Sandy.
Hey, we're back, and I am so lucky to be here in Sydney, Australia. We are with Jeremy O'Gorman from Transworld Business Advisors of the Northern Beaches, and we are in a beautiful part of Sydney, the greater Sydney area, and business is going really well. And I was just talking to Jeremy. We're meeting with him, talking about all the great opportunities, and it is a great time to buy a business.
Absolutely, Andy. So just following up on that conversation with Andy. So at the beginning of the year, we had some problems here in Australia. We had an investigation into the banking lending practices and we had some federal elections and so forth. So the lending sort of started to dry up and also the housing market, of course, then started to tumble. We've had a bit of a turnaround with housing prices now rising and the confidence is coming back, but what's really good is that the multiples for the businesses out there haven't risen accordingly. So there's some really great opportunities to buy into a business at a reasonably cheap multiple.
You know, it's funny. We do see that. I don't know why it is during elections, but everybody's scared. They want to know what's going to happen after the election. So people kind of freeze. So, and it's funny because businesses do bounce back perhaps a little bit slower than perhaps the housing market. It's a little bit more fluid. So this is a great time to buy a business. And you were saying, there's a lot of businesses around here, right?
Oh, absolutely. So just on the Northern Beaches alone, and predominantly SMEs. So we've got just in a sort of a 15, 20 kilometre radius is about 30,000 businesses ranging from, the fish and chip shop down at the beach to large manufacturing businesses. So there's a great range in our territory and all of them sort of, most people don't have to travel far from home. They're 5 minutes to work and 5 minutes to home. So that's the lifestyle that everyone's looking for.
Yeah, and you were talking to me a little bit about wages being stagnant over the 5 to 10 years. So obviously buying a business, you're kind of taking control of that.
Oh, yeah, couldn't agree more. So in Australia, that's the big thing. Cost of living is going up, whereas wages have been on hold for at least 5 years. Buying your business, you're taking control of what you can bring into the household. You can buy a business knowing what the owner's earnings are, but knowing that you can increase those earnings.
Yeah. So, and specifically, like you said, you have some really good businesses for sale. I mean, I know you have a business that's going to sell without even hitting the market. So that's even more that a rent roll, that you're selling. But so that's even more of a reason why people need to come in and talk to you. And you have this great new office here.
Yeah, we've been in this office for 3 weeks. We're on the shop front, so love people to drop in and touch base. Obviously, they can contact through the website or by phone call, but absolutely, there's some really, really good opportunities. I think what we sell on the Northern Beaches, which is quite unique to Sydney, is that it is a lifestyle. Once you get over here, most people don't like to drive over the bridge. They don't like to drive anywhere, and it's a big enough community to support yourselves, but also, living 5 minutes away from the beach as well.
Yeah, we see that a lot in New York, right? Nobody wants to cross a bridge or go into tunnels, so everybody kind of stays to their borough. So this is driving around here, there's lots of small businesses, lots of medium-sized businesses, lots of good opportunities here for people. So is there anything else that you wanted to cover for business buyers or sellers? I mean, we talked about that it's a good time to sell your business, right?
Yeah, I think it is. I think selling the business at the moment, the buyers are starting to come out of the closet, as Andy said, after the elections and the Banking Royal Commission. But also, as a seller, the multiples have crept up from the beginning of the year. So at the beginning of the year, the multiples were closer to about 1.2. We're now at about 1.7, 1.8. So, you're getting a lot more money for your business than what you were not only sort of 8 months ago.
All the good reason to contact Jeremy and his team. What's the best way to get in touch with you?
You can send me an email, jagorman@tworld.com.au, or my phone number is +61 0413 151 607.
Jeremy, thanks for being a great host and hosting me and Corey here in the greater Sydney area.
Pleasure, Andy.
Thanks for tuning in to our show today. If you like the podcast, don't forget to subscribe through your favorite podcasting app and leave us a review. If you have questions or suggestions for the show, visit us at tworld/thedealboard or email us at thedealboard@tworld.com.